Well, thank you, Jerry. Like you said, my name is Ben Vermillion. I'm an employee here at UXPin. I'm going to take you through a couple of walkthroughs building out Hifi designs. We're going to start actually in Sketch. I happen to have a couple of screens built out. We're going to make this an interactive screen that takes people from being ready to sign up for a webinar to actually signing up, and then to the welcome aboard, the thank you screen. Now, UXPin's got a couple of free plugins that you can use, one noticeably for Sketch, of course. To get that going, I select both artboards. Let's make sure I've got those zoomed out. Plugins, UXPin, export the selection. It's also Command-E. Now, UXPin organizes all of its projects into various project folders. I'm going to scroll down to my webinars, select that, and I'm going to make a new prototype as opposed to importing it into one of my other ones. MDL demo, export that, and we will wait for it to save all the assets. UXPin saves all the assets as their own layers, just like they are in Sketch. Here's my project. And after a moment to load, here it is in its entirety. Now, you may notice, if you look carefully, that there are a couple of typos down here in the text. It just should say invited, and I'm missing a full stop period at the end. So let's hop back over to Sketch. Let's fix that. Invite Ted. Full stop. The process again is to select both your artboards. Command-E. And update the design. Anytime you do that, instead of creating a new project, it goes back to the other one and makes the appropriate changes. I'm going to refresh the prototype here. My changes have taken effect. We do it this way because we want to keep the design as much in Sketch as possible. But we're going to make it interactive here in UXPin. For one thing, we're going to follow some material design standards. I'm going to look for an input field. UXPin's got more than 1,000 different elements to look for, but I just want a basic input. Put that into place here. Material design also says that you shouldn't have lines at the top or sides. So I'm going to come over to Properties, scroll down to the border, and turn those off. Now I've got a bit of overlap here, and that's fine. We're just going to hide these temporarily. Here's what's going to happen. Users visit the screen, they click I'm ready, this will disappear, and the other buttons will come back. It works like this. Interactions, new interaction on that element, on click, we're going to show two elements. First off, we're going to show the call to action. Excuse me, the sign up. Add one more element. And we're going to add the input. Let's make that fade instead of just having a snap in there. Add that. Now at the same time, we want that other button to take us to the second screen. So let me turn that back on. And instead of just a plain interaction, I'm going to make a link. On click, go to page, thanks. Add that. And once again, we're going to hide it because we don't want this to show up on the initial load. Speaking of that initial load, let's see what we've got. Jump over to the preview tab. When we're ready, here it is. Now you may notice that I made a mistake. There's a little bit of pink left over here. But that's no problem. I'm going to select that, interactions, new, and on click we're going to hide this very same element. Now since it's visible, I can target it like that. Let's have it fade once more. Add that. So you can go back and forth and add as many interactions as you feel is appropriate. A simple refresh. And there we are. Let's sign up. And it takes us to the second view. Now there are a couple other features I'd like to walk you through before we get too far into it. One of them is called the specifications, or spec mode. Whenever you select an element, go over to specifications, you can add bits of code or use cases or other lists to a field. In this case, I'm going to say a bit of code. Nothing too fancy here. We're going to say that's HTML. Add that. Back over here in preview, I enter spec mode. Let's jump back to the welcome screen. Click on that. At first, it gives me all the stuff that I need. All the dimensions, all the pixels, the colors in the image. Sorry, I just got to refresh that one more time. Specification, there it is. And here's that bit of HTML. You can make this as simple or as complicated as you want. I'll show you that in just a minute. Simulate mode is where it actually interacts. Spec mode is where you see all the specifications, typography, colors, layout, etc. Documentation is a little different. It's a new feature we've got that lets you add some notes, best case uses, for example, to a file. Now in this version, I happen to have a whole lot of stuff built out. Spec, for example, includes a full figure. Text has a lot of this stuff. Let's take a quick look. Head over to spec. And here's my complete HTML. And here it is for all this. Now, why on earth would I want to do that? It's very simple. We can use this design document as your whole spec, as your entire creative brief. Clicking on this, you can copy the code, paste it into your prototypes, into your working HTML files, and everyone's on the same page, so to speak. Now, documentation, like I mentioned earlier, is a little different. This lets you say, okay, this hero art needs to go with something in our library. If I want to know exactly which one that is, I just hover over it, or I can click it for a different view. Jerry, I notice we've got a couple of questions coming in now. Would you like to address those?
We can address those at the end, Ben. We can go through some of the other items you had here, like interactions and states and things like that.
All right, that sounds great. One more thing I'm going to add to this is a site-wide navigation bar. If I do a search, look for Navi, here it is. I get a basic navigation bar. Now, like I said, UXPin's got a whole bunch of elements, and most of them are pretty straightforward. The navigation bar is one of those few exceptions. If I look in properties, I can control the usual things, the typography, the color. But it gets really interesting down here at the bottom. These are all the options that are actually in the links. Let's say they want to fix this. I want to say this is a dropdown. I simply add the A, and it changes automatically. Anything with a slash is a sub-item of the one above, and anything with a double slash is a sub-item. But you know, that doesn't really fit in with the rest of the design, so let's make a change there. I'm going to change the fill to something a little different. Since I'm in Chrome on a Mac, I can use the system-wide color picker to grab this color here. Let's make that active color a little different. Brighten those while we're at it. I want to say no border. And the active color, once again selected, is going to be closer to this color. Now, when I say site-wide, I really mean site-wide. We were going to turn this into a symbol, or as we call it in UXPin, a smart element. I right-click on that, create smart element, navigation bar, add, and it appears down here along with my system images. When I drag one of these copies into place, and I make a copy and I double click, I'm actually editing this symbol, this smart item. If I shrink it, every copy in the entire project will shrink as well. If I change the links, if I change the colors, everything will change. So let's kill this one. I'm going to jump over to the thanks screen, drag one into place. And instead of saying this is active, this is a drop-down, I'm going to double click, scroll to the bottom, and I'm going to say sign up now. And instead of this is a drop-down, I'm going to say about this webinar. Changes are immediate. They save on the fly. And when I go back to the welcome screen, my changes have also taken effect because this is a smart element. You know, that's a pixel off right there. Double click. I'm going to make this 599. Arrow key down a little bit. That's better. Back to prototyping. Just about perfect. Now, there is one other problem. I seem to have lost my drop down. That's actually not a big problem. It's just on its own layer. Click on layers here on the left. Find that component and make sure it's on the top. Let's preview that. Our drop-down works. My interactions work, and my links work. Folks, that is a quick glance at UXPin. We looked at bringing in sketch files. You can update them on the fly. We looked at adding interactions. You can do animations. You can add hides and fades. You can make them show and reveal. You saw links, and you saw a navigation bar.
Ben, that was a great sort of crash course into UXPin prototyping. Thanks for getting into the guts there. We've got some great questions here. Before we get into it, I just wanted to just introduce some more context into what we did there. So obviously you can see UXPin is pretty powerful for just creating a prototype, but what really makes it shine, in our opinion, is that you can collaborate on these prototypes very easily too. So as Ben showed, when you switch over to preview mode, you can, yep, there we go. Stakeholders can very easily just comment anywhere on this prototype, and people will automatically get notified of the comments. You can also toggle between whether the comments should be visible to just the project team or to everybody in your UXPin account. And so it really allows it just easier for you to scale up your collaborative design process. And of course, if we're to pull back one level and view the whole workflow, it's very comprehensive. So what we did here was you can go from Sketch into UXPin, create a very powerful development ready prototype, go into UXPin spec mode, and now you can work with developers and start to actually prepare that design for handoff with all of your assets and all of your documentation, all within the context of your prototype. And so with that being said, let's dive into some more of these questions here. And I'll also have my colleague Lindsay here, who's a product consultant, and she can help chime in and answer some of these questions along with Ben, who is a designer here. So let's get into some of the questions here. So I think this first question is probably, Ben, more appropriate for you, which is, so if I make a change on one artboard, do I have to export that artboard again to UXPin, or is that automatically synced?
No, you need to export them one at a time. As soon as you make a change, you can save the file all you want, but you need to cement your actions into place. Select the artboards, and then export them.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's great. And I think the second question here will be more appropriate for Lindsay, who works with a lot of customers who ask this question, which is, so somebody here says, UXPin looks very interesting. It seems intuitive and easy to use. It also seems similar to what Axure can do. Maybe you can explain how UXPin is a better choice than Axure, or why some customers that come to you, why they end up switching from Axure to UXPin.
Hey, Jerry. Yes, I'd be happy to answer that. How UXPin differs from Axure is similar to what Jerry said a few minutes ago, in that it is collaborative, right? So UXPin is really intended to not only be a prototyping solution, but to be an agile workflow solution for your entire team. So while we have the editor where you can dive in and do some really in-depth prototyping, you can also do rapid prototyping. We also give you the ability to get feedback on the fly, to centralize your documents so that your team members, whether with you in the office or remote, can work in real time with you, right? We're like the Google Docs for design.
Right. I think that's a great summary, that, it's like Google Docs, where it's very powerful, it's very collaborative, and it just brings everybody into that process at an organization, which is of course very powerful for an enterprise setting. And the next question we are going to take here is, so somebody has a question about smart elements. I think this Ben, this might be better for you because it gets a little bit technical. So if I have to break apart a smart element, so let's say I've got a navigation bar and I want to make different menu items marked as active depending on the page where it's used. Is that something that Smart Elements can support? Maybe you can just go into Smart Elements and sort of their function a little bit more.
Okay. Yes and no, it can do that. As you saw earlier, double click, any change that I make to something in a symbol in a Smart Element is reflected project-wide. Let me undo that, Command Z. So if I were to change the links here, they would change on every page. Instead of about this webinar, I'm going to say speakers, and I'm going to delete this one. Oops. Typo. It happens. Now, depending on your design, there are a couple things you can do. The first obvious one is to turn off the auto highlight and put a bar at the bottom. I'm going to find a simple box, line it up there, and then change that per page. Let me turn off that highlight, take off the asterisk, and with some creative adjustment, you can make it work like that. And again, it depends on what design you want. Another thing you can do is use transparency. Slide that up here all we want. Change the fill. Adjust the opacity. And then slide that around per page or per section.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looks good. I think the next few questions I think are better suited for Lindsay here. So Lindsay, I'm going to unmute you real quick. So the next question is, does UXPin also integrate with Photoshop?
Yes, UXPin has an integration with Sketch and an integration with Photoshop. The two integrations are similar in that they import your files into UXPin without flattening them, so you retain access to your layers, meaning that you can actually animate those layers, right, and create behavioral interactions on those prototypes. So for example, if you would like to create a top nav that sticks to the top of the page as you scroll or animate a drop down, you're able to do that. How the two integrations differ is that you are able to use spec mode with sketch files. We don't have that level of integration built with Photoshop currently.
Gotcha. And the second question here is more about the role that UXPin plays in the larger product development process. So UXPin seems to be very useful for design and for collaboration and approvals and all that. But once a design has been signed off, does UXPin lose its purpose, or how does UXPin still play a role in product development after the design is handed off to developers?
You know, in an agile process, especially in enterprise companies, the job is never done, right? Once we launch something and we deploy, we're always going to be iterating upon that, testing with users, evaluating, trying to improve the process and the product. So that is where UXPin, continues to be of value. So after you deploy, those files are still going to live in UXPin. They're going to be available for you to iterate upon, test with users. And for our customers, UXPin is not something they use for just a couple weeks or months at a time. It's something that's a continuous value for them throughout the year.
Right. And the next question here, I think I'll pass it back to Ben because it's a little bit more of a hands-on design question. So in the design that you have here, for your tabs, can we change the size of those tabs, or does each tab have to be a different component?
The tab sizes are automatic. If I were to add a new one here, like that, they resize automatically.
Gotcha.
Now, having said that, I can stretch it or shrink it to whatever size I need.
Gotcha. Great. I think the next question then I will pass back to let's see here. Actually, I think this question would be good for you too, Ben. It's about the responsive capabilities. So we had a few questions, which is how does responsive or mobile prototyping work in UXPin, going from both creation to preview?
UXPin does support responsive design. What you do is you make sure you've clicked on nothing selected, add a new adaptive version. From here, you can either choose a preset, let's say an iPhone 6, or you can customize the dimensions that you need. Give it a custom name if you like, and very important, copy everything from your default layout. If you want to start from scratch, don't do that, but most people I've talked to like to copy things over. Let's add that breakpoint. Now, everything in the white area is on the canvas. Let me drag this off for just a moment. This is what's visible in the preview. Everything that's gray is off canvas, that's invisible. So what I want to do is shrink this down to fit. Maybe I want to leave join us the same size. I probably don't want this navigation bar here. I would invent a different one. Love it or hate it, we do have a menu. We make that a different color. And then shrink the text accordingly. And so on and so forth. You can switch between those breakpoints just by clicking up here. And when you're previewing, you've got two options. The first is to switch back and forth. The second one is to automatically set the breakpoints so that as my screen shrinks or expands, it swaps between those breakpoints.
Great. And just to touch on here, if you want to send your prototype to actually be displayed on your native device, you can either open up a link or you can send an SMS text message to a device, and then, as Ben is showing here, you can then open up this prototype on your mobile device to see how it displays in a native environment.
It's worth noting that anyone with a preview URL, even if they don't have a UXPin account, can view and comment on these prototypes.
Yep, that's a great point. Yeah, so I think that is the last question that we'll take, since we are starting to push up into the next session here. So everybody, thank you for joining the UXPin high fidelity prototyping demo today. If you guys have any further questions, feel free to contact hello@uxpin.com. We are very fast to respond here. This isn't just some black hole, of general inquiries. We check this on a very regular basis. It goes into everybody's inbox on the customer support team. So if you have any questions about UXPin's capabilities or what you saw in the demo today, feel free to contact hello@uxpin.com, and we will put you in touch with the right person on our product team. And we also have, let me drop in uxpin.com here. We've got, that is of course our homepage there if you'd like to poke around and learn a little bit more about our capabilities. And we also have a community forum that goes into a little bit more depth on tutorials and how-tos. And so here is the next link there. That's a little bit more hands-on. And of course, if you're directly interested in UXPin, you can always email sales@uxpin.com, and our product consultants will work with you guys to find the right plan that will help you meet your needs. Otherwise, thanks everybody for joining us today. Ben and Lindsay, you guys did a fantastic job. And let me find the link here for our next session that we have here. We are going to be talking with Louis Elfman, and he's going to be talking about incremental change in enterprise design. So let me get the link there, and we should be all set. I will drop that in here. That session will be starting in about 10 minutes. Otherwise, yes, thanks everybody again, and hope to see you at the rest of the conference here. Yeah, Ben, Lindsay, nice work. I will talk to you guys later.
A pleasure. Talk to you later, Jerry.
All right. See ya.
Bye.